They're calling it the biggest sweep of underworld leadership in nearly 30 years. 5 reputed godfathers arrested and indicted in New York. They are said to run the 5 most powerful crime families and make up the so-called commission which governs the city's organized crime, with influence extending across the nation. Lucky Luciano set up the commission in the 1930s. Since then, it has resolved, often violently, the disputes among the 5 families. The indictment singles out racketeering in the concrete industry, but it also ties the commission to everything from murder to gambling to loan sharking, charging the leaders under a federal anti-racketeering law. Federal crime fighters see the indictments as an important step.
The major muscle for organized criminal enterprises in the United States has now been brought to the bar of justice.
It's to the bar, but the question now is whether the charges will really help break up the crime families. And that's the subject of our cover story this morning. Joining us, Steve Trott, the Assistant Attorney General in charge of the Criminal Division. Law Professor Robert Blakey, who wrote the anti-racketeering law known as RICO, which made the indictments possible. And Peter Maas, author of the Valachi Papers and Serpico, among a number of other books. Peter, and all of you, welcome. Stephen, let's start with you. What is significant about this particular set of indictments that makes it a little different from the past operations?
For the last few years, we've really been on target against the mob in the United States, but this case against the commission itself is really the bullseye. We've been very effective at the lower levels, we've been very effective at the intermediate levels, but this represents the very top, and as Bill Webster said yesterday, this is the symbol of organized crime itself. If we're able to break this, it will really deal a serious blow to organized crime in New York and throughout the United States.
In the past, you have tried to get to some of these people by tax fraud, sort of by circuitous routes. You've been unable to get them on conspiracy charges, but you are armed with a racketeering law right now. And what else enabled you to get in there?
The key to this are some of the tools that were passed by the federal legislature a number of years ago. Wiretapping, judicially approved electronic surveillance is the key, witness protection, immunity, and of course the racketeer influenced corrupt organization law that enables us to go after these groups for what they are, hierarchical groups devoted to crime. And this law enables us to target them for what they're responsible for and put them where they belong.
Let's elaborate on that from the man who wrote that law, RICO. What did you intend to do, and why is this so good?
Let me put it in context, Bill. I may have drafted it, but the man that's responsible for it is the former Senator John L. McClellan, Roman Aruska, and Congressman Poff. I worked for them, yes. But they did it. The heart of the statute is that for the first time, you look not at individuals committing individual crimes, but you look at organizations committing patterns of crime. And I think that's very significant. There's another negative in this that I'd like to raise. What he did is superb. The sad thing is it wasn't done in New York. A major part of his evidence was turned over to him by state prosecutors, not the whole. And the reason they had to turn it over is because the people in New York
they didn't pass that law,
have not passed RICO. And the same thing can be said in Michigan, Ohio, Illinois. These people should be the last line. The first line should be state and local people, and they haven't been.
We should say these tools have been around for a long time, and you didn't really know what to do with them, did you?
Well, it's taken a while, and let me say this for these people, and by this I mean this administration. This administration has taken the legislation enacted in '68 and '70 and made it real. Their act is together in a way in which it hasn't been together in some 10 years.
Well, that news conference yesterday brought out the big guns, from William Webster to Rudolph Giuliani here to all of you here this morning. Peter Maas, should they be feeling as good?
Well, I think it's very commendable what they've done, but, you know, it's like a wind, the Sirocco wind that sweeps the United States about every 20 years. We're going to break the Mafia. It's this year. 20 years ago, it was Valachi. 20 years before that, it was the Kefauver hearings. 20 years before that, if anybody's old enough to remember, it was Thomas E. Dewey. And I think, you know, I think it's fine that but to suggest that this is going to break the back of the Mafia, I think is
Peter, I don't think they're suggesting
a little bit.
that.
Well, that's all I've been reading in the papers.
Yeah, what they're suggesting.
The headlines, that's what I've been getting.
I mean, my God, the Daily News had a story before it happened.
But you don't believe everything the Daily News. What they're saying
yes, I do. It's very accurate.
This is the first step, if it is carried through in subsequent steps, that these organizations will not be able to continue. The reason these guys are in it is for profit. And if being in it, is not profit but indictment, they won't get in it.
Look, I think they have a great collaborator, which is the American public, the key to the mob's operations. Incidentally, I mean, the Justice Department doesn't even have the name right. They keep calling it La Cosa Nostra, which was an invention of J. Edgar Hoover, as you
That's
know.
nonsense. That's on tapes before.
They don't say law.
Here.
They don't say law.
Speaking of tape.
I'm just joking about that, but it's a minor thing. You pick up these guys. In the old days, when the family boss, his name went on the family. These guys don't even have their name. You have Carmine the Snake Persico. That's a hell of a name. He should have his own. It's a Colombo family.
I suggest that you may be very, very interested to see the evidence that comes out in this
I'm
case. What
sure,
you're saying is that
right.
the more things change, the more they stay the same. That's not true anymore.
Well,
Evidence that came from bugging a Jaguar that was not about who they slept with, which Webster said yesterday, but about dealings, business dealings.
right.
Absolutely. We're going to lay out in detail for the jury to hear and for the American public to see the inner workings of the highermost levels of the mob.
And
I
it's going to
think
be,
that
it's going to be their voices and not secondhand testimony. You're going to hear La Cosa Nostra. You're going to hear all of the key words being said, and it's going to be their voices. It's not going to be secondhand.
Let me suggest their case and then get a response from you. That means they are claiming that they won't have the witness problem before. Witnesses having to go into court and being afraid they're going to get bumped off.
Peter is writing about the 1960s. What he should do is study these cases and these laws, and he can write about the 1980s.
We've changed the operation completely. We're using new techniques, and there's a new appetite out there for making sure that what Peter is talking about does not happen. President Reagan has clearly indicated that this is one of his priorities, and the Justice Department for the last 4 years and for the next 4 years under his leadership is going to focus at all levels of organized crime from the top to the bottom, because not only do they levy a hidden tax on many industries, but they're involved in heroin dealing and the other kinds of
which
things.
raises violent crime. Okay, you can talk now.
No, I'm just, I think it's wonderful that these guys are being put away, these 5 guys, and there's a whole bunch of other guys hoping they'll be put away because they'll take their place. We've had tapes, we had Raymond Patriarch in New England.
Yeah, but they weren't admissible. Peter, they weren't admissible. These tapes are admissible.
I'm not saying that these guys aren't going to...
And this is not the
If
only prosecution.
new people want to step up and put on the handcuffs, we're waiting for them.
Look at it this way. It's a conviction for them. Maybe it's a new book for you.
It's an indictment for them.
It's 17 past the hour, too. We have to go. Thanks. The government has gone in with both barrels blazing in its fight against organized crime. Here are just some of the headlines from the past week. 2 crime family chieftains are among those indicted in a $1 million extortion scheme at New York's Kennedy Airport. Reputed Godfather Carmine Persico is caught after months on the run. A major New York crime figure is charged with planning the 1979 assassination of crime boss Carmine Galante. Hearings in Miami probe the mob role in drug trafficking. Racketeering charges are filed against a syndicate of Chinatown gangs in several major cities. And following federal charges, Bank of Boston officials admit the bank was used by an organized crime family to launder cash. With that, we're going to try and bring you up to date on the war against the mob in this morning's cover story. With us, Rudolph Giuliani, the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, and a prime mover behind many recent indictments against organized crime figures. And Howard Abedinsky, founder of the International Association for the Study of Organized Crime and author of The Criminal Elite. Let's start with you, Mr. District Attorney, U.S. Attorney. Is this going to break the back of the mob? Is it designed to really be a war?
Well, it's designed to do that. I mean, the purpose of it is to break their power as much as we can. I think we're all realistic enough to realize that this is a very powerful organization, and even the significant indictments that have been returned aren't going to break their back. But if we can keep it up for 2 or 3 more years, I think we can have a significant effect on reducing their power. And we have no other choice but to try to do that.
Why all at once, and why so many? It looks like a pattern there. Can you outline it?
President Reagan, back in October of 1982, when he announced the Organized Crime Drug Enforcement Task Forces, basically pointed us in that direction. And we put 13 new task forces all over the country, 1,500 more agents and prosecutors. We have a lot more resources devoted to it. And we're making use of the RICO statute and some of the other laws a lot more effectively than we have before. And it is absolutely a concerted effort.
We asked Mr. Abedinsky to come in to try and give us a little background on the, quote, mafia and organized crime in this country and whether or not you think this is going to have an effect in stopping it.
Well, I don't think that's going to have an effect on stopping it. I think that the U.S. Attorney is quite realistic in his assessment that the government has an absolute obligation to do something about organized crime. Certainly we cannot permit people to operate with immunity and impunity. And his actions obviously have had a significant impact on some of the leadership of very, very important crime families in New York. We have to recall, though, that these crime families date back to the second decade of the 20th century, so they've been around a great deal of time. And the removal of leadership on by the government, placing these people in indictment, putting them in prison, has not in the past had any significant impact on the families themselves, only on the individuals who are incarcerated. So I would doubt whether or not this would have any long-lasting effect on the families, unless, as Mr. Giuliani points out, the pressure can be kept up and further indictments of the leadership as new leadership arises. But I think he knows that new leadership is going to arise after the present leadership either dies or is imprisoned.
Recruitment is a big
It is.
big item.
I'd be a little more hopeful than the professor about that for this reason, particularly with regard to the Mafia. I think demographics are on our side. They were able to recruit in large Italian-American ghettos of the 1920s and 1930s. They don't exist anymore in that respect. If they try to recruit the people they were recruiting 40 and 50 years ago, they're going to find that those young people are now in colleges, universities, and not willing to move into something like the Mafia. In fact, they've been experiencing this difficulty for 15, 20 years. That's why Joe Bonanno brought people over from Sicily, and they don't operate with the same sophistication as the American version of the Mafia does. And secondly, we now have RICO, whereby we can go after their assets. In the case against Matty Ianello, we put restraints on millions and millions of dollars worth of property to try to take the capital away from them so that the organization can't go on after they leave. It's going to be a very long effort, 2, 3, 4, 5 years of these kinds of indictments. But if we keep it up, I really believe that we can break their back, and that has to be our goal.
But we hear about other ethnic groups these days. You have Chinatown in your indictments, and others.
Well, I think that you hit a very, very important aspect of the impact that these indictments and any subsequent indictments will have, and that is the recruitment patterns. Mr. Giuliani points out that it perhaps is much more difficult to recruit young men into these crime families, but yet in New York City we've seen third and fourth generation groups coming into the traditional crime families, the Purple Gang in New York, for example, well known to you, and they are third and fourth generation Americans, and they are moving into traditional organized crime.
But what about Pakistanis and Colombians?
Well, remember now, these groups that are moving in are really single service groups. The newer groups are moving in, taking advantage, of course, of the marketability of heroin and cocaine, paralleling much of what occurred during Prohibition. The impact of these groups, however, is around these single items. They have not moved into, for example, labor racketeering, which is extremely, extremely important. They don't threaten transportation in the United States and have the potential to upset corporate and corporate interests. So yes, they are serious. Yes, something must be done about them. Yes, we should be concerned. But I still think that we should be more concerned, and I think rightfully so, in the priorities that Mr. Giuliani has placed on the traditional crime families. They are a much, much more significant threat to America on the whole than the new emerging groups.
He's done that. Do you have more indictments coming this weekend?
Well, there'll be more indictments in the future, and there also will be indictments in the area of these emerging groups, because we can't make the same mistake with them that we made with the Mafia. For 3 decades, federal law enforcement denied that the Mafia existed, and we allowed them to grow into the very powerful organization that they became by the 1940s and 1950s. We can't do the same thing with the Chinese groups, the Colombian groups, the motorcycle gangs. We have to do both. We have to go after the Mafia, try to end it, do the best we can to accomplish that, as well as keep track of these emerging groups, and that's why you see cases against the Chinese.
Thank you, Mr. Giuliani. Mr. Abedin.